Welcome to Comadres y Comics. Comadres y Comics is a podcast hosted by 3 Latina women.
We highlight the Latinx presence in the comic book industry as creators, characters, and fans.
Join us as we talk chisme, comics, fandom, and beer. Hello and welcome to a new episode of Las Platicas. And here in studio, who do we have today, Kristen?
Yes, today we are doing Las Platicas, which, as a reminder, it's a show hosted by Comadres y Comics where we meet with creators and friends to talk about upcoming projects, events, and all around awesome news in the comic community. And today we welcome back Madeleine Holly-Rosing, an award-winning writer and creator of the Boston Metaphysical Society, and now the mind behind a powerful new 4-issue miniseries, Morgana Pendragon, currently crowdfunding and live on Kickstarter. We are excited to dive into a story that reclaims one of mythology's most misunderstood women. In Morgana Pendragon, Madeleine isn't just telling an Arthurian tale, she's rewriting how we see power, age, and womanhood. As Madeleine puts it, when you get to a certain age, especially as a woman, you find you are less and less represented in stories unless you're the mom, the grandmother, the feisty aunt, or something even more banal, the wicked witch. Morgana Pendragon is my response. Get ready to explore how Madeleine is turning old tropes into new power in Morgana Pendragon #1. Welcome back, Madeleine.
Yay. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. So I have to say that I think I've shared this before that as a kid, a literal kid, probably elementary school, Excalibur was my favorite movie, and I had no business watching Excalibur as an elementary school student. But in reading your Kickstarter and all the information that you had and your about and why you chose the story and everything, I got so excited to actually immerse myself back into this world. I've really missed it and I didn't realize it. So I'm really excited to hear about this story. We know so much about Boston Metaphysical Society and what a great story that was and how you really treated those women characters in that book. And so we want to just kind of start by asking you, Morgana Pendragon is such an iconic and complex figure. What drew you to her specifically to write a series around?
Well, I mean, who doesn't love the King Arthur stories and Lancelot and Guinevere and Camelot? And I've probably seen all the movies like everybody else. And, those that are more grounded, loosely in facts, and those that are fantastical like Excalibur, John Borman. And yes, you probably were too young to see that. With a very young Helen Mirren.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Oh,
gorgeous.
Yeah. But it probably started, I had originally written a Morgana screenplay when I was in film school. Like a lot of my stuff is kind of the basis of stories that I had developed originally at UCLA Film School. It was an action adventure, but it was set in the present day. And I wrote it a long time ago. And, I looked at it and it was fun, but since then you see so many Morgana types or Morgan Le Fay set in the present day as a detective or this or that. And it did strike me, a friend of mine, when she read the original screenplay, said, I'd really like to see this back in the day. Mm-hmm. Not in present day, but in Morgana's time period. Mm-hmm. And I think my gut response to her was like, so would I. So, that screenplay went bye-bye. But that character and me as a writer have changed. We're older, hopefully wiser, and more cognizant of our society and how it treats women. And in so many stories coming out of Hollywood and other places, they lack any kind of agency, particularly if they're older women. We are dismissed and diminished in society. And I kind of, as an offshoot, there's a gentleman who does an equivalent of a TED Talk about why there are grandmothers and why women live of an average 25 years longer than men. And he says, why has that happened in evolution, that the grandmothers survive? And that's to pass on knowledge.
Wow.
Oh, I love that.
I love
Yeah.
it. That should be a sticker.
It's pass on knowledge, because obviously to keep the species going, our evolutionary imperative is to have children. And once we go through menopause and we can't do that, society looks at us as like, well, you have no worth anymore because you can no longer produce children. Well, evolution says something else quite different. And it's the grandmothers and the great aunties and everything that pass down the information in order for the species to survive. So that's my little TED Talk over there.
I love it.
Anyway, I thought that was really interesting that he was discussing, like, why do we have grandmothers? Why do women outlive our, what society deems our usefulness, which is very, I'm losing the word now, very apt for the time period right now that we're living.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
So yes, and I'd also looked, having seen a lot of all of the movies and TV shows about Morgana, I'd never seen one where she was older. She was also always the hot, seductress, sorceress, temptress, add your SESS to whatever it is. And never someone who had lived a life and lived a very full life and brings a lot of knowledge and skill to the table. And basing it, Morgana Pendragon is, obviously loosely based on the Arthurian legend, which was all written by men. It was like, what would happen if she fled? She and Arthur did go to war, and you do learn in the first issue why they went to war, and why he has her return and has given her safe passage, so to speak, to return to England. And it's not, nothing is what it appears to be. And the key to all this is she no longer has use of her magic.
Whoa.
And this is something that happened to her when she fled England. And there was a lot of things that happened during that time period. And so now she has to come back, and there's only a limited few people who know this truth about her. But on the other side, she's a very capable military leader, became a mercenary, has been a very successful one for 2 decades, has a mercenary team. And the team is what was really interesting to me, because if you study anything of the Silk Road, went from Asia to, Europe to Asia and back and forth. It wasn't just one road, it was multiple roads. There was actually a lot more movement during the medieval times than people think, because of, the media in Hollywood, they portray everyone as like, they're all white. It's like, well, no, they weren't.
When I was looking at your Kickstarter, I absolutely love seeing the different characters that we come across, and all, like how you described them, all 100%, if you know anything about real history.
Yeah.
So like, these people were coming and going back and forth all over, especially when you consider the fact that Rome built a lot of the roads that are being used, and Rome connected almost everything. So moving on to that, what kind of research did you do for this project, especially around Arthurian legend or Celtic lore, Anglo-Saxon myth, and stuff like that?
I mean, probably the usual, diving deep into a lot of internet, background, and just, I mean, I had a lot of knowledge anyway, just coming into it because of my own reading over the decades.
Yeah.
um, and but I also I wanted to give the story grounding and ground it into a reality, which is why I talk a lot about the Silk Road and the traveling and the merchants and the trading.
Mm-hmm.
But I try to the best of my ability. I'm sure I will make some cultural errors, and that's on me. I do my best. This is also fiction.
Yeah.
But like, for instance, Getty, who comes from West Africa, specifically the Ghana region, I reached out to a friend of mine who has done actually, comics and research into tribal scarification. And then he led me to another guy who, said, "Oh, go read this book." I said, "Oh, let's go try to find this book." Can't find the book
Mm-hmm.
unless it's like a $500 book.
Oh,
my
not an
God.
out of print book.
It's like an academic book, and it's like, okay, well, I'll do the best I can here without having to buy the $500 book.
Mm-hmm.
So for things that I'm, not as knowledgeable in, I did reach out to people and who are better at it than I am, and to try to get it right. So we try. It may not be perfect, but we try. Lena was really interesting. I have a master's degree in Arabic and the cultural history of the Arabs.
Oh,
And
nice.
so, yeah, I'm one of those women who, I'm like Morgana. I wonder where this all came from. And one of my papers I wrote, you were delving into, Persian and the influx of Islam into Persia and how that changed the culture of Persia. And prior to the Rashidun Caliphate moving in and taking over Persia, which eventually became Iran, uh, women were of equal status. They were soldiers, they were generals, they were tradespeople. They had a voice in their society, and that was all wiped out, and they were relegated to second, third, and fourth class citizens.
Mm-hmm.
So Lena is a refugee from that, having been a merchant herself, a very successful one, and having that taken away. So she's the business manager. She's the money. So she's really focused on this got to be paid.
That is super interesting, especially Lena as a character. That's so. I'm wondering, what themes are you exploring in Morgana Pendragon #1, and that you feel are especially relevant with today's social climate?
Well, the treatment of women in power, and societal expectations for women. Morgana gets a lot of pushback when she returns to England because she does not know her place. And the irony, of course, is that she once did until she was betrayed by her brother, and which started the war. In my version, anyway. And so, yeah, that's those are pretty much the main themes of treatment of women in power, and societal, at that point, English societal expectations for them.
That theme is very interesting to me. The way that power is seen when women hold it as opposed to when men do. And it's so hard for people sometimes to just accept it. hearing you talk and reading more about this book reminded me of when, I don't remember what Star Wars movie it was, but it was a movie where Princess Leia was General Organa throughout the whole entire movie. And I remember someone coming into the shop and talking about how it bothered him that they changed Princess Leia's name. Why did they have to go and change it? And I said, dude, they didn't change her name. Her name is Leia Organa. And in this movie, it was more important to depict that she was a kick-ass general, war general, as opposed to a princess. And he's like, what? I was like...
Because they also expect you to agree with them.
Yeah.
And I'm like, no.
I'm like, she, you know, was in charge, and she was, you know, kicking asses and taking names?
Well, it's also a perfect example of an older woman in charge, an older woman in power.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And she worked her way up to that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, we were introduced to her as Princess Leia and who she was, but I mean, even in the earlier movies, it was pretty clear she had a better grasp on strategy and tactics than Luke ever did.
Right.
Yes.
That's funny. So you have said that this book is your response to how older women are sidelined in stories. What was the turning point for you that made you want to write this? Was it something that happened, a personal situation, something you saw in media? What drove you to writing this particular narrative?
I don't think it was anything specifically. This is always the character of Morgana, since I wrote it as a screenplay many years ago, is I thought would be interesting to go back to. Mm-hmm. And I'd also written it up as a TV pilot as well. Mm-hmm. Probably what drew me back to it specifically was something happened when I was at UCLA. Mm-hmm. In my TV drama course where I was developing both, originally we had to develop 2 different series. And one was Boston Metaphysical Society. The other was Morgana. Mm-hmm. And the class, which was comprised of writers and producers, had to vote on which one I was going to pursue to go ahead and write the pilot. Boston Metaphysical won by 1 vote.
Oh, wow.
So in the back of my mind, it was like, I'm going to have to go back to this at some point.
Yeah.
Because to lose by 1 vote in a classroom of my peers meant that I had something there. Yes. Mm-hmm. And even though this isn't remotely related to what I had done all those years ago, it's evolved as it should, because I've evolved as a writer. My life has changed. The character's life has changed. And so, yeah, I think that probably really was what triggered me to go back and redevelop it and redevelop the character and think about it in a different way. And the fact that no one, to my knowledge, has ever written a story other than, and I take that back, I haven't read Avalon, the Avalon books.
Mists of Avalon, yes, I love
Mists of Avalon. In fairness, I haven't read them, and I did that intentionally because I never wanted it to influence what I may be going back to. Right. So they may, in fact, have older versions of these characters. So, I mean, that may be true. People who've read it, they would know better than I. I feel now I can go read it because this is so well developed. I'm not going to worry of it, any slippage. I mean, I had the same issue with Lady Mechanica when I was developing Boston Metaphysical. I didn't want to read that because I didn't want to accidentally have it influence. Right. And so when I was eventually hired by Marcia and Joe to do the Lady Mechanica story, obviously I read all of them, and is not an issue. I mean, they will never influence Boston Metaphysical. But at the time, I didn't know that, and I just wanted
right
to keep that, that wall, that firewall.
Yeah, superficially they looked similar. I was gonna say, as when I first saw it and when we had talked to you at WonderCon, that when you had told us the story, I was just like, oh, like Mists of Avalon. But then as I kept reading further on the Kickstarter page, and I was just like, oh no, this is something completely different, but like still kind of like along that vein, but completely different. So I think you're in the clear.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, you would know better than I, having read it. So,
so are there any? I mean, spoilers, I guess, but you don't have, you can allude to them. But are there any surprising mythological or historical elements you've woven into the narrative?
The Silk Road
Yes.
is part of the historical elements. Some of the movement of the peoples from the north, the Picts, we start off actually in Francia, which eventually becomes France, and there's a little nod there to Avalon. And yeah, right up in those first pages. So you'll get the little nod to Avalon right there. For those, it goes by quick, so
blink and you'll miss it.
I'm so sorry.
So yeah, I mean, I do try to ground it as much as I can in history from what we know of it, and so much of it changes depending on who's writing the history.
Right.
So yeah.
And I love that you do that, because we noticed it too in Boston Metaphysical Society, when we're just like, wait, these were actually like real people, and how you've like reinterpreted everything. You do it so wonderfully.
Oh,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Yeah, definitely. We were talking about some stereotypes about women earlier on in this interview. What were some what stereotypes did you want to dismantle in this book, other than the ones that you've already talked about?
Probably that a woman is not defined by her attractiveness. So much in fantasy, they're all beautiful, they're all slender, most of them have long hair, and to take the step back, you will see a little of that. I don't want to give spoilers, but there's a reason for that. But it's not quite the same, where you have the perfect hourglass shapes and things like that. And probably the other thing is that women are more than a gender, and that Morgana is a warrior, a mercenary, a former sorceress who happens to be a woman.
Right.
Not a woman who da 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 da. But yeah, it's like, I am a writer and a producer and a creator who also happens to be a woman. Right. Does that affect my point of view? Of course it does. But it doesn't define the fact that I'm a writer.
Yeah, it's not all that you are.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
So that actually brings up an interesting question for me. The last book that we read as a review from our last episode was about a 20-something-year-old girl who was just graduated from college, but she was stuck. She felt like she was in a dead-end job and had all of these dreams and aspirations for what she thought she wanted to be when she was a young girl, and realizes now at 20-something she's not moved forward with her dreams in that way. And we talked extensively about how we as women go through these cycles many times in our life. That I was saying 20-year-olds don't have the corner market on feeling like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do I want to change? And if so, how am I going to? Or I am changing. How now is my life going to reflect that? So, in this story, Morgana definitely is navigating a lot of change as an older woman, doing all of these things, being all of these things. And does it reflect at all your real world experience navigating being an older woman, maybe dealing with invisibility or expectations or a reinvention at all? Have you had any of those experiences, and did you weave those at all into Morgana's character?
Probably the, ignored, dismissed, and those attempting to diminish me, which hasn't worked really well.
I can't imagine that. In my mind, I'm thinking, how did that come across? Because you do not at all strike me as someone who is easily dismissed.
It's easier when you're younger.
Right.
It's really easy because, particularly in a job situation where you're not really sure quite how to react, and you want to react politely, but yet others aren't being polite, and then when you finally put your foot down, you have no idea what's gonna happen, and then realize later that it just got you the respect that you needed.
Right.
And not just needed, but deserved.
Absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm.
But a lot of that is just it's the learning experience as you grow up in the working world, and as you all know, it's difficult because you have to balance the social, the political, and keeping your job, and all that stuff. But I mean, the other thing that Morgana has to deal with in returning to England at this point is seeing her son for the first time in 20 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because she couldn't safely return, and no one knows except for a very few people, hardly any people, maybe 2 or 3, don't realize that he's her son.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Because it had to be kept secret. And to save his life. And she left to save his life.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But obviously you have a lot of emotions and conflicting feelings on both sides. And that's as a writer, that's always interesting to explore with 2 characters
Yeah,
who are trying to grapple with, like, everyone told me you were evil and horrible, but I'm not quite sure anymore, but I want you to be evil and horrible because that makes it easier for me.
Right.
So, and you just mentioned Mordred because that's her son. So, were there any other Arthurian characters or moments you intentionally flipped or reframed to highlight feminist themes?
As far as flipping them, not so much, in that at this point Camelot is dead. Camelot is broken, and there's only basically 2 original knights of the Round Table left.
Oh, I like
so that. You're talking about a country that lost its shininess. And then mixing that in with the legend, and then what actually happened sort of kind of back then. Because there's depending on who you read, some historians believe that there was 2 Welsh kings or chieftains who kind of blended together, and King Arthur was built on them. But then other historians have talked about King Alfred the Great of England as being the basis for the legend. because he was the king, the first king who wanted to unite all the desperate kingdoms in England under one king. And even though he didn't do it, it ended up being his son who achieved that. It was his dream that eventually led to that. So I'm sure the actual legend of King Arthur was a combination of all of these different stories and legends that were going, and real people that inspired a legend or a myth. I mean, we'll never really know.
Yeah.
Right.
But, to make it really clear, yes, King Arthur is fiction. Lancelot, Guinevere, all those folks are Morgana, completely fictional.
Darn it.
Darn it, yes.
You'd be surprised. Someone's like, well, what about Merlin? And like, Merlin didn't even...
The guy who did magic, yeah. He
Yeah,
was for sure.
that's the one that's real.
That's real. I'm going to swear on that. Merlin is real. Absolutely real.
So cool.
Yeah, I think if my notes are correct here, it was the 12th. Yes, here it is. 12th century writer Geoffrey of Monmouth created the character of Merlin, and so yes, even Merlin is referred to here, but Merlin is also gone.
Okay. Well,
Yeah, it's just the problem, as you know, comics are a very concise, intense medium, and if you story-wise, if you start integrating characters like Merlin and others of that ilk, they can easily take over the story.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not their story. It's Morgana's story.
Nice. We lost Jen for a minute there, but she's coming back. There she is.
She's back.
I'm here. Yay.
Yay. Arthurian legend is full of women written in the margins, Morgana included. In your work, those women take center stage. Is that a conscious part of your mission to help fully human, to reshape how women appear in genre fiction, moving away from the flat archetypes towards fully human, lived-in portrayals? What are words of advice would you give other creators to succeed in fully writing a developed woman in their stories?
For the first part of your question, the answer is yes. The second part is, I hate to sound obvious here, but you need to treat women as human beings, not as objects.
No word.
Not as gender specific. Oh, they're women, so they're like a blank slate. There's nothing there.
Mm-hmm.
And which, as we all know, is patently untrue. And to put away, and this is the hard part, because we all have biases. We all have innate biases. And the hard part is trying to overcome them, and first recognizing them, and then second, overcoming them. But, for a lot of like young men growing up in somewhat healthy relationships, they see a mother figure and see other women of that age as a mother figure, and not realizing that that's not who they are at all. I'm sure to my grown, I have adult nieces, and I'm very different from their aunties in the Marshall Islands, as you can imagine. Both have equal weight and have equal worth, but our lived experiences are very different. And so what we bring to the table to teach them are very different, but they're both legitimate.
Right.
And so depending on, the culture that your character is coming from, they're going to be bringing different baggage with them, different skills, like what I do to tell young writers when you're developing characters, you should write biographies that go back past to their great grandparents, because you don't realize how family trauma, family, what's the word? Except the word, just things that are passed down, habits that are passed down through the family. And in very innocuous one in my family is like all the women in my family back to my grandmother always clip coupons. And you know, and my mom would like have this stack of Sunday papers and she's clipping coupons, you know, and nobody does that anymore. I don't do that anymore, but I do electronic coupons.
Yeah. Adapting with the times.
I adapt with the times, but I still, you know, my grandmother did it, my mother did it, I did it, and probably actually, I don't know if my nieces do it. They probably do. And I'm sure, and hopefully the male contingent will do that as well. Yeah, I know men who do that as well, but I'm just saying this is something that was very innocuous and somewhat silly, but it also taught how to budget and save money and things like that. So, but you need to have these little things that are passed down through your family because that resonates into your personality. And like I said, that could be something as simple and silly as clipping coupons to something more traumatic or something in the middle. And most things are going to be in the middle.
Yeah.
So I am super excited about reading issue 1 and all of this little tidbits of story that you are sharing in the interview. But we are definitely wanting to know more about the creative team. So can you tell us a little bit about who's involved in this project?
Absolutely. Alden Kay is my interior artist, and fun story about him. I was at Rose City Comic Con and I was chatting with David Walker, who said, you know, Bitterroot, Big Jim and the White Boy, fantastic writer.
Yes.
I usually stop by his table and we chat con stuff every time I'm up there. And I mentioned to him that, hey, I'm looking for an artist for this new project. This was last year. And he said, oh, I ran into this guy. I really like him. I'm going to hire him for a personal project of mine at some point, but do you want me to send him around? I said, sure. It was Alden. And so Alden came to my table and I said, yeah, I'd love to look at your stuff. And he starts flipping through his, you know, portfolio. And I'm going like, oh my God. It turns out he was the Mad Cave talent winner.
Oh, yes.
Oh.
And but what really got me was that he drew women like women.
Oh, wonderful.
Short, fat, you know, and I'm actually pretty clear. It's like, okay, he knows it's medieval times, so there's not going to be like boob windows and crap like that going on. And one major female character who will be introduced in issue 2, we have to talk about her a lot because she's very different and will definitely be on the more sexy side, which is fine. Nothing wrong against that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just want her presented in a way that does not objectify her. And I think with Alden, that's going to happen. He's just done a beautiful job.
And did I read that he actually doesn't have formal training?
Yes. Isn't that frightening?
That's amazing.
That is incredible because even just looking at those 3 pages on the Kickstarter, it's so well done. So well done.
Yeah, and if you watch the video all the way through to the animated portion, you'll get to see glimpses of some of the other stuff too, and you'll be amazed. Yeah. You'll be amazed. Warnia Sahadawe is my colorist. She's from Indonesia. I've worked with Nia before. She colored a short BMS story for me that's in one of the trades that was drawn by Roberta Ingranata. Troy is, of course, back on lettering, and he's always fun to work with. Rio Burton is doing the main covers, and for issue 1, Roberta Ingranadas did the variant cover, and that is colored by Valentina Pinto, who did a beautiful job. You notice the lens flare going on off the side. That's all Valentina. And Dave Avalone is my editor. And so, yeah, I decided to work with an editor this time because I don't have time to take classes and I wanted to up my game. So Dave has been in the business a long time and is making me a better comic book writer.
That's awesome.
That is so great to hear.
That's kind of cool information. Just a little ancillary question to that. How did you find the process of working with an editor? How was that different? And obviously you're saying it's helping making you a better writer, but how so?
Well, it's pretty much, I've had beta readers through all BMS, and I take notes really well. That comes from going to film school.
Right.
I think all writers should go to film school because, you get your ass handed to you on a regular basis. You just get used to it.
Yeah.
And you develop a thick skin and you learn to weed out what's relevant and what's not, what you need to think about and go back. And I love getting notes. I love getting good notes that make me think and are not necessarily the solution to the problem, but like maybe give a couple suggestions and a hint, and then I go off and figure something else out, that's the whole point of notes. What's interesting with Dave is that he didn't really have to give me that much in the way of story notes as the way in formatting and talking to my artist and how being more clear in communicating how I wanted a panel to look. And part of that is me, and that I don't like to micromanage my artists. I hired them for a reason.
Right.
But it seems to be working that I'm giving Alden enough structure, but not so crazy that he feels constrained. And so that seems to be working for him. And it's kind of funny because I had to go back and going back and rewriting issue 4 of Pike's Peak for Boston Metaphysical, because as you probably know, I have a new artist on board and she's finished with 3, she's working on 4, and then realizing it's like, oh yeah, she can't do this panel. Her mind's going to explode. This is crazy. And going back and trying to rework some panels, and Danny's been great. She's been working with me just because I know more now. I mean, I wrote that 2 years ago, and I'm not the same writer I was 2 years ago. So I'm looking at it now going like, oh, I could do this better.
Yeah.
I could make this more clear here. And so, yeah, it's just getting different eyeballs on it and a different point of view. So yeah, I like to do that. And he seems to be having fun too. So
that's awesome.
That's great.
I love that you're actually in your explanation highlighting that comic book creating is really just telling a story in so many different ways. You're the writer telling the story, the artist is coming in and telling the story, the colorist is coming in and highlighting certain things, and even the letterer, the way, we had an extensive conversation about how important letterers are to comics in our last episode. And so I never really thought about it like that, but it is literally the same story just being told in 4 different ways. All coming in to create the overall bigger picture. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah, and most people don't realize you can have the most beautiful comic in the world, and bad lettering will destroy it.
You hit the nail on the head.
We have always discussed how editors are the unsung heroes of comic books. Like people really need to give it out to editors and also be able to hand their love project to an editor and just respect the process. Definitely.
Yeah, I actually said letterer.
No,
Oh,
but
no.
I'm always also
But okay,
yeah, but editors
okay,
as well.
fine.
Yes, yeah.
Editors, letters, your artists,
The whole
all of them.
team. The
Yeah.
whole
Oh
team.
yes,
Collaborative effort.
No, because I've seen beautiful work done by artists and just go like, wow, this is great. I open the page and they're also doing the lettering, but they're not letterers.
right.
And I'm
yeah.
like, oh, this is just sad.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is very sad. And also,
Sad.
if it is such an amazing story, visually and the story written, it is so frustrating to be taken out of that story when you are focusing so hard on trying to make the dialogue work because the bubbles are all over the page, or
Mhm.
just very, very frustrating, and can, as you said, ruin a story. So
Yeah, if you want, well, Saga, of course, has exceptional lettering to it. But if you haven't read the graphic novel version of The Handmaid's Tale,
Oh.
no.
because I reviewed that a long time ago for Fanbase Press, and the lettering just ties it all together. It's
Ooh.
the fragility of the lettering just enhances what these women are going through.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Mm.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah, it was really impressive.
Yeah.
The art's interesting too.
Yeah, I was gonna say the one of the letterings for me that ever really stood out was from Mouse. So good, so good. And I think that was just all Art Spiegel too. So
Yeah.
it can be done. You can be a one person team, but it takes a lot of work.
It's rare. Gwen Tavares, who was my earlier artist she was the artist for the 4 standalone sequels. She did the art and the coloring, which was amazing. She didn't do the lettering, but this woman is just amazing. She's also a sculptress, and it just goes on. She makes her own beer.
Wow.
Wow, very cool.
That's way cool.
She is multi-talented.
We'd love to interview her.
You actually probably should. She lives in France, so you will have a time differential thing going on.
Yeah.
The reason she moved on after the 4 sequels is that she had 2 kids under the age of like 3.
Ooh.
and it was during like COVID and lockdown, and it was just her and her husband, and so her mind was
There was a lot. There was a lot to handle. Right. So circling back to your Kickstarter. What's included in the Kickstarter campaign for Morgana Pendragon #1, and what rewards are you most excited about?
Well, of course, you can get the basic digital for $6.
Mm-hmm.
That's easy peasy, and it looks like we've made. Let me see. I believe we have made our 3rd stretch goal. Yes, we've made our 3rd stretch goal.
Wow.
Which means everyone who pledges to a reward will get 12 additional digital indie comics.
Mm-hmm.
Which I'm sorry to interrupt you, which I'm super excited about, because you're gonna have Isnana, the volume 2 by Elise.
Oh yeah,
Greg
from Greg.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, he's also a sweetheart.
He is.
He is. And he's incredibly talented.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's crazy talented. Anyway, and then you can get the floppy version, the hardback paper version for $15, and that also includes a PDF, and it includes shipping. Everything includes shipping except for some of the add-ons, because either weight or size changes the packaging. So I have to add some for that. Mm-hmm. You can get the variant cover with the PDF. You can get both the regular and the variant cover. I do have metals covers for both the regular and variant. Mm-hmm. The super fun add-ons that people are loving, and they look beautiful. I have 3 metal bookmarks.
They're so nice.
Yes, that Alden did those. And so those, a couple of them come with a couple of the reward tiers, but you can, if you select one, I mean, you can add them on in any mix or match that you want. Makes it easier. We do have a special retailer package.
Ooh, very nice.
With 8 copies for $45. And that's US only. Sorry. And we do have some digital bundles, those who really like to read on their Kindle or iPad, and where you get Morgana 1, you can get the special edition Volume 1 and Volume 2 of Boston Metaphysical Society. You can get Pike's Peak 1 and 2, and also the prose, the novel, and the anthology in the Boston Metaphysical Universe. And of course, you could always add on the digital download of our audio drama, The Ghost Ship, which I'm sure you guys have heard about. But yeah, if you like to keep it simple, you can, either get the digital, and you can add on specific digitals that you want as well, or get the basic book, or get the basic book with one of the bookmarks.
Yay.
That is so cool.
The bookmark of the bird sitting on the branch and the beautiful
and the sword, the sword and the bird bookmark.
Yes.
That is so cool.
That's the first one that Alden did, and he sent it to me. He goes like, "What do you think about this?" I went like, and
so cool.
and yeah, I got samples in. I don't know if you saw the picture of the samples. They look so good. Yeah. They look. If you want to, where'd they go? Okay, let's see what you can see.
Yes, look at that.
Wow, that looks amazing.
Oh, they must look even more amazing in person if this is what we're seeing now.
Yeah. So that is the Morgana Mordred. This is the sword and the bird, and then this is Getty. And eventually what I'll do is I'll have character metal bookmarks for all the characters.
Oh, nice.
All the major characters, for all the team.
Yeah.
And probably some other extras. But definitely we'll get all the team in there at some point. In later Kickstarters, I like to parse it out.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, oh, that's great. That's
Before
really cool.
we move on to the next question, I know you're not even done with this Kickstarter yet, but what is the timeline for the 4 issues? Do you have that already set out, or are you kind of just trying to take a breath?
Trying to finish up Pike's Peak, because people waited a long time for that, because as you may or may not know, unfortunately, I had to let my last artist go.
Oh.
And so I found Danny. I probably waited too long, but I think I waited a year because I kept hoping, because I loved Elizabeth's work, just love it, but it just wasn't working out, unfortunately. And Danny's been doing great. She started slow, but man, she's cranking it now. I'm really hoping to do a Kickstarter for that, to get that in people's hands in the fall. I would also love to do Morgana number 2 in the fall.
Okay.
The only potential hitch in this is that I'm going to be moving.
Right.
Oh.
And probably, August, September-ish. We think. It might end up being later. We're not sure yet. Just because of the deal we have with the sellers, and which is fine, but it's just a matter of, okay, where are the books gonna come in? Where are they going to go out? It's it's kind of a logistical nightmare.
Yeah.
And my husband's going you may have to wait till next year. And because there's a narrow window in the fall before the holidays just take over.
Right,
and so it's September, October. And to me, I won't launch in November. That's not going to happen. I may launch, say, mid-October, but then always finish before Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll never run something through the holidays. That's just crazy. People, I'm busy. People are busy. It's not.
Oh yeah, that seems like a nightmare for sure.
So we shall see. But we're in a good place with Morgana #1. For it to be delivered in July. I'm hoping before San Diego Comic-Con.
Oh, yes.
Ooh,
definitely.
Yeah, because I want to be able to bring copies with me.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But yeah, no, we're in a very good position for all of that to happen at this point.
Nice.
Great.
I'll probably have all this stuff in the can and ready to go. But being able to launch really depends on where we're at in the moving process.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it's tough. Please remind our listeners where they can find more about your work and what's next in the horizon after the campaign. You already kind of told us about your moving. That sounds like a little, but hopefully to like a really nice place and everything, and you can get everything situated out. But yeah, just remind our listeners where they can find your work.
You can go to my website, which is queenofmercia.com. Facebook is Queen of Mercia, or my name, Madeleine Holly-Rosing. On Blue Sky as MC Holly1, I think. Same thing, Instagram, MC Holly1. You can find all that on my website. Or just type in my name, or I know Boston Metaphysical, and everything comes up because like that's mine. And then that'll come back to Morgana. But it's it's about time I launched a new series, and but because of all the other spinning plates in my life, and finding the artist, that was the thing, is I needed to find the right artist for the project, and that was the most important thing. And we're on Kickstarter for one more week. We end in the morning on Friday, May 2nd. So get on board.
Awesome.
And then on Saturday, May 3rd, which is Free Comic Book Day, Madeleine will be participating in the Santa Monica Comics Company's Free Comic Book Day collaboration with the Santa Monica Public Library in Santa Monica at 601 Santa Monica Boulevard, and she will be there from 11 to 3.
That sounds awesome. I'm going to be there too, guys.
I am not.
Well, thank you so much for sharing this project with us.
I'm so excited about it.
We're super excited.
Super excited. Yes, absolutely. We love your work.
You.
Thank you so much for sharing this moment with us and spending some time talking about your Kickstarter. Don't forget, guys out there, go ahead and follow her and also support this Kickstarter. We have been your host. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jen.
And I'm Madeleine. And be sure to like and subscribe.
Yay. Bye.
Bye.